Good job, Alex.
Thank you very much, Toastmasters. Our third speaker, because he made mistakes of judging a book by its cover, Mark Ahlers nearly missed our opportunity to get to know an incredibly interesting individual. Fortunately, fate stepped in and rescued Mark from his error. So this morning, Mark recalls some memories of that interesting individual and will illuminate us in a speech entitled, A Pirate, a Pusher, or Pimp. And please welcome distinguished Toastmaster Mark Ahlers.
With his black velour jacket, gold chain, and scruffy beard, to me, he looked like a pirate, pusher, or pimp. So I instinctively stayed away from him. But that changed dramatically when I volunteered to be club treasurer. You see, as treasurer, I was required to sit at a table right next to the club sergeant at arms, the guy with the jacket, gold chain, and beard, John Nucitelli. On my first day as club treasurer, I came armed with a legal pad, a number 2 pencil, and an amazing amount of arrogance. You see, having majored in accounting, I thought I was overqualified for the job. So I declined the training. Big mistake. As the throng of Toastmasters arrived, I clumsily scrambled to collect the money, provide change, and record each name and amount paid. But because of my inefficiency, the last Toastmaster wasn't checked in till long after the gavel had sounded to start the meeting. Meanwhile, John Nucitelli just sat by quietly and never once laughed, criticized, or tried to embarrass me. I think he actually felt sorry for me because the next Friday, he handed me the club roster and said, some prior treasurers used the roster and just recorded the amount paid next to the member's name. You might find it quicker. Quicker indeed. Thanks to John's suggestion, I became quite proficient at checking folks in and was feeling pretty confident in my abilities. That is until week 4 when John said, did you balance? I said, what do you mean? He said, well, some prior Toastmasters would count the number of people in the room and see if it balanced with the number that paid. So I followed John's suggestion, and I wound up with one more attendee than payee. So I carefully scanned the room and identified the culprit. But I didn't take any action. Instead, I carefully watched that guy when he arrived the next week. And sure enough, he nonchalantly strolled by without paying. So I asked John what to do. He said, well, tell the guy you think you mistakenly forgot to mark him as paid. Then ask him if he paid. Well, when I returned, I let out an exasperated sigh and said, he said he paid. What should I do? John said, don't worry about it. I'll take care of him. Well, I don't know what John did or said to the guy, but I never had a problem with him again. In fact, now that I think about it, I never saw the guy again. Well, John clearly had my back. Anytime I had a problem, he would provide me with a good practical solution. Because John was not only intelligent, but he had something many intelligent people lack: street smarts. With his skills, I wasn't surprised to learn that John had successfully operated many different businesses, including a business I think John truly loved, property management. Today, John would be called an affordable housing expert. Back then, he was simply called a slumlord. In order to keep rents affordable, John brutally cut costs. He wouldn't tolerate hiring commercial companies to do repair work at high hourly rates. Instead, John would hire the same workers part-time during their free time at a fraction of the cost. The only problem was their free time was usually on the weekends, so most repairs had to wait until then. Well, as you might imagine, many tenants complained. Apparently, some of their complaints found their way to Washington, D.C., because a fellow named Kevin from Fair Housing showed up and accused John of racial discrimination. Well, John denied the charges, but Kevin wasn't convinced. So John summoned his assistant, Wanda, who was black, and said, "Kevin here says I discriminate based upon race. Is that true?" Without hesitating, Wanda said, "Oh, heck no. John doesn't discriminate. He treats all the tenants the same, like crap." Well, Kevin still wasn't convinced, so he did his own investigation. When he returned days later, he apologized profusely to John. Well, amazingly, John felt sorry for Kevin, much like he had for me, and said, "If you like, I'll show you some real discrimination." John then took Kevin to the black neighborhood nearby and explained how the city had closed the bridge that provided residents with easy access. About the same time, they started building luxury homes on the other side of the bridge. Well, when Kevin returned 6 months later, he thanked John because the city had agreed not only to reopen the bridge, but had pledged funds to build a better, bigger bridge. As you've heard, John Nuccitelli was quite a guy. With his skills, I believe he could have been anything he wanted to be, even a pirate, pusher, or pimp. But the one thing I'm eternally grateful John did want to be was my friend. I miss you, John.